Now let's move on to the last topic. Slayer. Now, why am I bringing up Slayer? Well, let me read this quote from Kerry King in regards to Slayer as and to whether they will ever tour again. Here's the quote right here. Kerry King says, "We are never going to tour again. We're never going to make a record again. Mark my word, we're never going to make a record again. We're never going to tour again because that was the last thing. We said back in 2018, this is our final tour. It took 5 years for us to come and say, hey, there's a couple of shows, 5-year anniversary." That is from a quote from Metal Ruse. It's a really good podcast from Australia where Kerry did an interview with them. Okay, so I would say 95% of the time, I never believe a band when they say this will be our last tour. Come on, folks, we've all been down this road before. How many times did Kiss say this is their last tour? How many farewell tours did Ozzy Osbourne do? How many farewell tours did Motley Crue do? I mean, I can go on and on about all these bands that say it's going to be our last tour. We're never going to play again. This is it. And then they come right back out a year later, start playing shows again. With Slayer, I do not believe that will be the case. Let me give you a few reasons and a few factors as to why, and why I think Slayer is a little bit different when it comes to something like this. First of all, let's talk about Tom Araya. A big part of the reason that band retired, Tom Araya had talked about, hey, that he didn't want to, I think he had some kind of neck injury, but he was interested in retiring. And I think Kerry King even said something about that, where he was upset that Slayer quit and basically quit sooner than he thought they should have. The guy just wants to retire, doesn't want to do it all the time. I get it. And I think that's a lot different than, Motley Crue and some of these other bands going up there saying, hey, we're done. This is because the guy's just worn out, just doesn't want to do it. Now, I will say, for those of you that were upset or calling them out, hey, they said they'd never play again, but they're playing festivals. They actually said right after they did their last tour, full-length tour, that is, that they would play festivals. They would consider it. And it took 5 years for that to happen. And I truly believe Slayer now is going to be relegated to a band that just plays big festivals every now and then, and that's it. Could they come back if Tom Araya wants to go on and do like a tour of like 80 shows? Maybe. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I think a big reason as to why is that he just doesn't want to do it anymore. I mean, we've seen interviews where this has been talked about. We talked about his neck hurting him from too much headbanging on stage. So I think that's probably the biggest factor as to why they will never tour again. And then Kerry King's doing really well with his solo project. He's kind of full on committed to his solo project. He's put a lot into it. That album was awesome. Obviously, in my top albums of the year list. Pretty high up in that list, by the way. And I didn't expect that. But it's one of the best things I've ever heard him do. And you got a new lineup of people that you get to play in a band with. And there's like, that magic is basically back with his solo band. So his solo band is doing pretty well. All his energy is going into that. I think at this point, the Slayer thing is basically going to be the occasional nostalgia act playing Wacken or some of these other festivals. And that's it. And look, it works out, for Tom Araya, for example, because, he doesn't have to do a full tour, but, maybe doing 2, 3, or maybe 4 shows a year, if that, that's not that big of a deal. You go out for a weekend, you play a big festival, you get paid, people get to hear the music again. It helps the festival sell tickets because you can't just go and see Slayer every night like you used to be able to. So it works out for the best for everybody in that band. That way Gary Holt can still concentrate on Exodus. I just think things are so different now that I just don't see them going out and touring. I'd be shocked if they went out and said, hey, we're going to play 100 shows or 80 shows. I would be shocked if that happened. But I do not think that is going to happen, folks. Just not going to happen. Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.